All right, thank you so much for joining us, Matt. Whenever we think about open source, it talks about community governance and collaboration. So that really excites me. What role do you think communities play in open source technology?
I think when open source without communities, you end up with the same challenge of the software is not going to evolve in a very balanced direction. You want different ideas, different perspectives, different users, different contributors, and that sort of makes your communities. Governance is equally critical for us because you have to understand who decides on what goes in and what doesn't go in, and how balanced is that? And if the needs change over time, what's the process for adjusting to those needs? And a lot in Red Hat, we ship almost all open source projects, and the governance of them is one of the things we look most closely at because it's a great indicator of whether something will be popular for a year or for a decade on it. So it's two areas, really important intersection between those two.
What do you think are some of your, in your memory, your case studies of open source projects that made you feel that was a game changer?
If I look at where I started, I went to school for computer engineering. So I was a hardware person. And I graduated right around the dot-com bust, and there were no hardware jobs on it. But software was just starting with e-commerce and those areas. And I learned a tremendous amount about software just from Linux itself. It was accessible to me. I could learn from some of the best in it. And it didn't come from a formal education or anything. It came from just the access to that code and learning from it. And I think that's really powerful too. That launched my career in software instead of being a chip designer on it, which I have.
Hardware to software.
It has, in a added necessity for it. If I fast forwarded to today, in those days, that was Linux. That's really what I learned around. Today, well, as of a few months ago, you can get an AI model, a language AI model, you can get a coding AI model, you can get a time series AI model for free under an Apache license to have the freedom to do commercial work on it, to continue to give it away for free if you choose to solve those hyperlocal problems or global problems for no cost on it. And that's something IBM seeded with the Granite model because of that belief in if you give it away for free, you'll see incredible innovation built on it. So it was neat for me to start my career in that and see that continuing to flourish just a few months ago.
So how do you think communities can add on, populate, and help work towards that?
Yeah, it's a great question. We often say usage communities or communities that don't have contributors, it's hard to be durable. If everyone uses your software, no one contributes back, they tend not to last in it because they're hard to sustain. So finding that balance is critical. In the days of Linux, there was nothing more invigorating, exciting for me than putting my fingerprints on the software, making a change, seeing something, being able to contribute something back was phenomenal because you felt the pride of helping contribute and move this along a little bit. The technology du jour right now is AI or generative AI. And it's a tricky one because to build a foundation model, it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's a very hard thing. When I started, you just needed a laptop or a desktop, and that was it. That was the pricing hurdle. We have put a lot of energy in Red Hat in finding ways to allow people with domain expertise to contribute into AI models without having to deeply understand AI or pay the training costs. So when we launched the Granite models and RHEL AI and those at Summit, we also created the ability for any person on the planet to contribute knowledge and skills that they own. It's nothing more than a git check-in with a file of what they know, and we will build those into the AI models for free. And so then the next day they can pick up that model and then use it to solve those hyper-local problems for them. But we're trying to bridge that, whether you're an accountant or security personnel, you can still have great ideas and great domain knowledge. How do you build those into AI without being someone that's been in the tech industry for a couple decades?
But what you are saying is that I don't need to be an AI expert in order to contribute in a model. And I feel that that's been the resistance for communities where everybody's excited about AI, AGI, everyone's talking about it. It's a buzzword. But if I'm not a techie person, I'm not a software engineer, how do I get involved and contribute? And you're saying that it's actually possible.
Yeah, so for us, it was a project called Instruct Lab. It actually came out of a group at MIT on how they could combine two concepts, techie sounding concepts, but one was synthetic data generation. And the reason they did that was, for myself, I'm not a data scientist. I can't come up with the 10,000 required examples to train an AI model. I just don't have access to that much data, but I can come up with 3 or 4 that I know. The second piece of that then is, how would you contribute those 3 or 4 things you know in a format that we can pick up and train? For a fun fact, the first experiment we did on this was actually knock-knock jokes and puns from one of our associates' 8-year-olds. Because our logic was, if they can contribute the 3 or 4 things they knew, which were puns that she wrote down in a little book, and we could train an AI model on it just from that contribution, that this would be a technology that could allow a lot of people to contribute. And so that is the goal of the Instruct Lab project, is make it simple enough to collect just a few things that you know, put them in a YAML file format that's easily understood, and submit it to us. And then we will do the heavy lifting. We will pick it up, we'll train it on, NVIDIA and cloud computing, and then we will put it in a model that you can get and then use after that. So that's been the concept. We're really passionate about it, of trying to find that balance that you talked about between users and bringing more contributors into AI.
I really love this notion of contributors instead of just users.
Yeah.
And with this changing, with all these tools and projects that's changing, that allows the community to have access to contribute. How do you think this is evolving, how a community thinks and sees open source technology?
I believe that done well, played out well, AI can be a tool that lets us do the work that we're passionate about. Yeah, I love programming at this point. It's one of my favorite things, solving puzzles on it. But as a professional programmer, you don't spend a lot of time writing code. You write documentation and tests and do integration tests and write, maintenance wikis and all of this work that we call toil around it. The thing you love is diminished by all of this work to make it acceptable and maintainable by others. When we look at the power of AI, for me, it's, can you remove all the toil to allow communities who often it's volunteer work and they don't have a ton of time to do just the thing they love and are passionate about, and let AI do the toil around it to make it maintainable and adoptable. That's the balancing act that I think if we get that right, it doesn't replace communities, it doesn't replace people. It makes that human ingenuity much more impactful by being able to amplify it.
And that makes much more sense for collective intelligence, because
Yeah.
you're not trying to do everything or understand everything.
Yep.
Still trying to do what you're really good at. I love what you said. AI is a tool to help us to do what we're passionate and deeply, deeply passionate about.
And for me, you talked about moving us from being users of AI to being contributors to it. For me to make something a tool that amplifies me, I have to be able to shape it. I have to be able to shape it for my tasks. I don't want to be a user behind a magic chat box window that I don't understand what's happening. I'm an engineer. I like going through those layers. And so for us, that's been the power of, let this run on a laptop. We say we have the data that goes in is open, the model licensing is open, the weights, the ability to get it is open, and let people start to shift that perspective from I am a user of it to this is my tool to shape and do the things I'm really passionate about.
What kind of ethos should a community build in order to embrace open source?
This is a lesson that I learned joining Red Hat almost 20 years ago. And we started in Red Hat out to change the world. It was really to make enterprises accept and believe in open source. And it was a challenging mission at the time. But every time I walked into the building, there was a sign that hung above the lobby, and it said, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. And I think being in open source, you have to be patient, persistent, and have enough confidence to get through that cycle, because when you start, you're probably going to be ignored because there are always other choices and other projects. It's a big world. Open source is a big world. If you get past the ignore phase, you're often laughed at of, you're not going to be able to make an impact. You're a small community. How can one person, this is one idea, it's not good as this other thing over here. If you get past that phase, you tend to get fought, where other companies that maybe you infringe on their commercial interest, or they believe that they've built something better in a proprietary model, they will fight that aspect. And if you can get through that phase, you win. And it's a really powerful feeling for us to see things like Linux win and Kubernetes win, and our current passion of we want open source AI to win in it. But that's what I tell people who are passionate about open source, whether you like it or not, that is a cycle you will probably have to go through, and having that ethos and spirit and passion and belief to get through it is, I have found it a really rewarding journey to go through.
We are facing a younger generation that was brought up with different characteristics and background and environment. Do you think this would change the ethos that you were talking about? And how would this evolve?
Yeah, one of my favorite moments coming out of Summit, because I was excited at Summit. It's a new challenge for us. It's very similar to the early days when we started in Linux now with AI. But I was walking back to the hotel, and there were two young engineers that were there. And they stopped me and said they were really excited about Summit and what we talked about. And they said that it was because they thought that my generation's Linux would be their generation's AI. And I saw all the passion and excitement that I had in Linux, like my ability to shape this thing to work for me, in how they were thinking of AI. And so there was such a strong similarity of where I was starting my career and seeing them start their career. I think the ethos and passion and belief will be very consistent. Technology will be very different, but it gives me a lot of faith and hope for just seeing what people are going to be able to do with the new technology.
I love the optimism that you have been bringing this conversation about open source and technology and AI. If I were to play the devil's advocate, right, and asking, is there any deep fear or hidden fear that you have, out of this? If we were to just take a step back, is there something that just keeps you up at night?
Yeah, I think it would be, and I'm obviously highly biased, I believe in the model on it, but in every one of these cycles, there's the fight aspect. And companies are savvy. They get better and better at the fight. And some days my fear is people will be convinced that this is less secure, or that we can't work together, or that the geopolitical issues will be too strong for us to be able to work in the same code base on it. And we'll see that fragment open source models. Whereas the power with it to me is it is having that global reach, independent of anything that's going on, where each individual has an equal chance to be able to contribute something. That's probably my fear. I chuckle sometimes because these same arguments made about AI were made about Linux in the early days.
Right.
Of how can it be secure when all the bad actors can see your code and find the problems with it? What do we hear about in AI? Well, this can't be trusted to individuals across the world. It must be trusted to a few corporations who can work with the government or big entities to drive it. those are the things I worry about, because I think it limits innovation, and I deeply believe in the innovation this process can give. But I'm an optimist, so I'm on the side of the human ingenuity.